Hey everyone, I am Josh. Thanks for coming by my channel again. Today is the last book haul from home that I'm doing, which is a series of videos, just themed on all the books that I've ordered like last year that I had delivered here to my sisters or my mom's. This is a science fiction book haul, which I had already filmed, but I seem to have deleted the footage. But to be fair, I didn't love the footage before, so I'm just gonna do it again. I probably look a bit more unkempt than the last time because it's been a whole month nearly since I first got here, first started filming, and I have not trimmed my beard and I need a haircut too. I also just got done biking and I'm exhausted, so hopefully I have enough energy for you here. But let's get at it. Let's get through these last set of books that I have to show you. First thing I'll say is that while I call this science fiction, this is also a little bit of fantasy because I have about 6 or 7 Zeno Hopkins books that I am hauling today, and to give you some context, it's about half or more than half of the books that I have here to haul. And a lot of her books I think mesh into science fiction and fantasy, so like you have a bit of both there, but I just lumped them all into one haul here in the science fiction haul. I'm gonna do my best to tell you what these books are about, but I don't want to waste too much time on the descriptions. But here we have Sister Mine, Zeno Hopkins. This is one that I believe is about 2 sisters who are related to a mythological god. We had to be cut free from our mother's womb. She'd never have been able to push the 2-headed sport. That was me and Abby out the usual way. Abby and I were fused, you see, conjoined twins. But here's the real kicker. Abby had magic. I didn't. Far as the family was concerned, Abby was one of them, the cursed as I was, with a tragic flaw of mortality. I might be mixing the mythology side with the other books, but I'm not sure how much of her books in general just tend to mesh into mythology. But this doesn't seem to reference that implicitly, but we don't know, maybe their father is a god of some sort. Next is Midnight Robber by Zeno Hopkins, and I swear I could have swore I heard someone say this book was a multiverse book, but when I read the back, it doesn't seem to be the case. So let's just get a quick glimpse. It's carnival time, and the Caribbean colonized planet of Toussaint is celebrating with music, dance, and pageantry. Masked midnight robbers waylay revealers, brandish weapons, and spellbinding words. But to young Tantan, the robber queen, is simply a favorite costume to wear at the festival until her corrupted father commits an unforgivable crime. Suddenly, both father and daughter are thrust into the brutal world of a new halfway tree. Here, monstrous creatures from folklore are real, and the humans are violent outcasts in the wilds. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a portal fantasy to like a different world, and they count that as multiverse. I don't know. I don't count that as multiverse, but still, intrigued. More mythology than probably sci-fi, but no, that's not true because it's definitely a different planet, so there's definitely some science fiction there, even if it bleeds into fantasy. And quite frankly, while I love science fiction and fantasy, I think the best science fiction or fantasy is when you have a mix of both. Like Middle Game, it's heavy fantasy, but you have a touch of sci-fi in there that really, I think, spices it up. Or like All the Birds in the Sky, Joy Jane Anders. That book is phenomenal in my opinion. It's that mesh of the two, just so good. Next is a newer book of Zeno Hopkins's, and I think it's newer, that is, at least my cover, my edition is. Most of these editions are, I don't know if you call them retro, but they're definitely a specific style, a really cool style. This is one that feels just more modern. Skinfolk, and this is just, a short story collection. I read her other short story collection, Falling in Love with Hominids, which I did not love her short fiction. I thought it was very creative, and it makes me super excited to dive into all this long form fiction. She's an author who I've heard such good things about that I wanted to invest in her entire catalog. And it's not like her short stories were bad. I just felt like they were incomplete, and that they're really tantalizing. It's like hearing the idea of a concept of an entire novel or of a pilot to a TV show, and I love hearing that, but it is there's a level of satisfaction that I felt was missing for that. And hopefully this will be better. I don't know if this is newer or older, but you know what? Either way, I'm clearly invested enough to say I want to read her entire work, which I haven't said yet, but part of that, a big part of that, I heard about Zeno Hopkins from In Jerry from Onyx Pages. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have read her in the first place. The first time I read one of Zeno Hopkins' books was for a reading vlog that I did for In Jerry. So if you like science fiction, by the way, you should absolutely check out In Jerry's page, Onyx Pages. Next is Brown Girl and the Ring, and I swear to God, this is mythology. I feel confident. Committed to finding science fiction. No, that's not right. The rich and the privileged have fled the city, barricaded behind roadblocks and left it to crumble. The inner city has had to rediscover old ways. Farming, barter, herblore. Is this like a dystopia? I love that. I love that so much. But now the moneyed need to harvest the bodies. I'm assuming that's a group of people, moneyed, M-O-N-I-E-D, but it's not capitalized, which is why I was confused. And so they prey upon the helpless of the streets. With nowhere to turn, a young woman must open herself to ancient truths, eternal powers, the tragic mysteries surrounding her mother and grandmother. She must bargain with the gods and give birth to new legends. This feels more heavy in the fantasy, but it is a solid mythological fantasy, and as I've said before, I like it a lot. Next is probably the first Zeno Hopkins that I heard about, and I won't lie, the cover made me think, this is some obscure book you're talking about, some random person I'll probably never hear about again. That is The Salt Rose by Zeno Hopkins, and I believe this might be one of her most famous books. And I saw this cover and it's so gorgeous, so much is going on. But I thought, no, it's like vintage. There's no way this is like a popular book that a lot of people are reading it. I was wrong, obviously. And honestly, from these, this is one of the top ones I feel most excited about getting to. And what it's about, I don't know. Obviously, the cover speaks 1,000 words. The picture says 1,000 words. Let's just see what it's about. I told myself I wasn't going to read these descriptions, but I want to know what I'm talking about. I don't like just saying, hey, I got this book. Actually, it's split into like 4 different identities, and I'm just gonna say a bit from each one. Janae Duval, the ginger-colored entertainer, is a descendant from Africans, slaves, and white sailors. It is twilight, and she argues with her lover Charles Baudelaire in his Paris apartment. Ginger is hot in the roots, with a beautiful, lush red flower above, and Ginger has a bite as she does. Myrrh, plantation slave and doctor, has healing hands through her spirit and is sickened. She both hungers for and dreads liberation, and longs for the gods to take her home. My wishes can't fly free. They rooted to the ground like me, who eats salt. Thais, a beauty from Alexandria, was sold into slavery and prostitution as a girl, impelled to seek a glorious revelation. She will travel the long, hot roads to Jerusalem. She is dark-skinned, this beauty, and ruddy like a copper. Azili, born from hope vibrant and hope destroyed, born of bitter experience, born of wishing for better, born. Across centuries and civilizations, Zeno Hopkins fearlessly explores the relationships women have with their lovers and with each other, with their people and with the divine. Interesting. I wonder how much of it's like an anthology versus an intersectional story. Interesting. I'm intrigued. I read this synopsis already, and for some reason I still wasn't expecting that. And I get like the idea of a festival, of a carnival going on here, but it's clearly more than that. But I'm seriously intrigued. Very fascinating premise in this one. Despite being exhausted from biking, I feel more energized about this haul than I did last time, which is good. I like enjoying filming. The New Mountain Arms. This one still looks vintage, but does not have that same style cover, which makes me wonder about the publisher and why that is. I'm curious what goes into these covers and why they've changed with time. Where are we? The New Mountain Arms. No, I misread that. The New Moon's Arms. I swear to God, I looked at that and I could have swore it said mountain, but it says the New Moon's Arms. Wow, what is wrong with me? Calamity, originally christened Chastity, is confronting 2 of life's biggest dramas. First is the death of her father, a rigid, principled man who rejected a pregnant Calamity when she was 16 years old. The second drama, she's starting menopause, and with this change of life comes the return of a special gift she had not felt since childhood. She can find lost things. Now, after a little tingling in the hands and a hot flash, objects suddenly appear out of nowhere. And then one morning, a missing item washes up on the shore that is not her old toy truck or her hairbrush, but a bruised yet cheerful 4-year-old boy, his ropey hair matted with shells. Fascinating. I am really intrigued with this. This feels like one of the more mundane stories that I have here, even with that taste of magic dipped in there. I like that because, I love a good, grounded, mundane story with magic elements, woven in. While I love a good, heavy magical story or sci-fi story, I like when there's just hints of it embedded in like a normal life, because it's just such great things to explore in that aspect. By the way, I am very intrigued by that premise, actually. Woman who finds lost things, and it explores her experience going through menopause, which is another fascinating thing to be able to see as a sort of a window into that experience. Now we're moving on from Octavia Butler, from Zeno Hopkins to Octavia Butler, and that is because I have here another gorgeous Library of America edition. This is one that I actually reviewed, that I got from NetGalley, and it is the Octavia Butler edition, where we have Kindred, fledgling and collected stories. And for those who do not know, Octavia Butler has several books, but she only has 2 standalone books. The first being Kindred, about a modern-day black woman, when this time was 1970s, gets sent back into the antebellum South, where she keeps going back there and she has to survive until she returns spontaneously to the present. And this keeps happening intermittently, where she's pulled to the past and pulled back to the present, and she's trying to figure out why it's happening. And while doing so, she learns a lot about her history and her ancestry and about the past as well. The story itself is so well developed as a science fiction story, as a time travel story, but also as a way to study slavery and to study racism and to study privilege, because it also studies the relationship between her and her white husband. There's so much to unpack, and while it's not an easy book emotionally to go through, it is a fascinating book that I highly recommend. The next one, it's fledgling, is I want to say her last novel, and this was about basically a vampire story. And I want to say our main protagonist, or one of our main protagonists, is that a word, is a vampire who is in the body of a young, I want to say either teenage, like young teenage, or a 12 or 11-year-old body. And it explores her, this adult woman who is trapped in this body. It's really controversial because it touches on some, it's because you have this woman in such a young body, you have this issue when it comes to the sexuality of her and how it's explored. But it also goes beyond that. It looks at consent on a larger scale and on power in a relationship, and what constitutes enough consent. Like, how do you get consent when there is an inherent power imbalance? And this is not like your average story like you'd have with Anne Rice. It's much more about these people who are basically their own family, their own society, and they are essentially just different in trying to survive with one another. And that's all I want to say without giving too much away. I want to give away a big part of the setup there. But I found it really fascinating, but I will say it does explore some controversial ideas. And then the collected stories is just all of her short stories and essays. I checked, and I want to say everything in her short stories, because she had 1 short story collection, is in here. Plus, I want to say 1 or 2 stories that were published in a magazine separate from that and never been published since then, like in a full collection. So you have that here. And I want to say there were essays, but I'm not sure if the essays were in the collected stories originally. I remember researching this, and there was 1 thing she ever wrote that was not included in this. And it wasn't something that's been published before. So everything you get here is everything you would get from these publications and more. And then her other works include 3 series. You have the Parable series, which is a duology, one of the last she wrote before she died, about a dystopian world. The next one being Patternist series. While it's much more than this, it does feel kind of like an X-Men series, but it's based on this idea of this interconnectedness, sort of found family yet again, of these somewhat advanced creatures who just have the ability to do things, to connect with one another. And I'll leave it at that. It's much more than just the X-Men, but it's tangential to that, and using that premise to do a much deeper exploration than what you see in those comics, in my opinion. Then lastly is the Zeno something, the Lilith Brood. I haven't read that. I think it has to do with aliens. But this is, I think, a great collection because it includes notes, it includes a timeline of her life, and it gives you context. And there are a lot of different resources out there, but this one is being led by Gary Canavan and Nisi Shaw. I feel like I recognize that name, Nisi Shaw, from something. It's just another resource for people who really like Octavia Butler. If you're looking for this collected edition of these books, this is a great way to do it. You can get it for $30. If you have a membership with Library of America, you can get this fancy edition with the hardback and everything for $25 and free shipping. So I do recommend. I have membership with Library of America because I love these. It's a great way to collect classics, which is a haul that probably go get before this one because I said this was our last haul. That is this. I recommend it. And like I said in my review of this, which I'll tag above wherever, I think it's worth it if you're a fan of Octavia Butler. One last work related to Octavia Butler, and that is Octavia's Brood. This is an anthology edited by Andrea Marie Brown and Walida Imarashi. I don't know a lot about this. I just know it's a set of essays and short stories that are inspired by the themes explored by Octavia Butler, hence the name Octavia's Brood. It's a science fiction stories from social justice movements. And I do believe there are some essays in here as well. And what I'll say about this edition, IASAK Press, it's gorgeous. Gorgeous cover, obviously, but it's also a perfect texture. I don't know what this is on it. It's like this, not this paper, but it's also not your traditional plastic covering either. It feels really, really nice. Next is a booktube darling here, and that is Slay by Brittany Morris. And this is one that I'm a little trepidatious about just because I know it caters to a lot of YA readers, and I tend not to appreciate or enjoy traditional YA approaches to stories. There are caveats to that, but the big reason I'm going into this, despite not expecting to love the writing style, is because of the premise. I've heard great things about what it explores and how it does that, and also because of how it incorporates the sort of sci-fi version of it. So hopefully this will be a fun ride regardless. I am running out of space here, so let's rush through these last two. First one is the Toll third book in the Scythe trilogy, another booktube darling here that's sort of been talked about a lot. I really enjoyed the Scythe series, and honestly, it's one of those books that really are the exception to, you know, typical writing that I was just talking about before. I just really like the writing style of Nurse Testament. That's what I'm trying to say here. This is the third book, which I ordered to here because I wanted a third copy cheap, so I bought it in the States. It was cheaper than getting it from a Canadian store. And now I have it. This is just a nice copy. I will say the third one, how do I feel about it? Probably the least favorite of the series, but it's still great. I like the conclusion. I have a whole video where I talk about that. It's kind of old. I don't love it, but I will reference you to that video if you want to hear my concluding thoughts on the series. It'd probably be somewhat spoilery. Lastly, before I run out of space here, is To Say Nothing of the Dog by Connie Willis. This is book 2 of the Oxford Time Travel series. This is a book that I actually DNF'd. And so why then did I buy it? That's a great question. Why does Josh do anything? You know what? Stop trying to understand me. You never will, and neither will I. I want to like the Oxford Time Travel series because, you know, I love time travel, and I've heard such great things about Connie Willis's time travel. And I did like the first book, the Doomsday. The problem is that this historical fiction doesn't always appeal to me, particularly this period, this Victorian period that they're traveling to here, made it really hard to connect to. I want to return to it, which is why I inevitably bought it again, but I'm still nervous. And, you know, I don't know, like, I bought this, I don't know when, like, it was sometime in 2020 I bought it, but would I buy it now, knowing my fear and knowing I have too many books? Probably not, but I don't feel comfortable getting rid of it either because it's still something that does appeal to me, especially since I got like 30% through it before I gave up on it. It was just that I wasn't connecting and I wanted to try again when I was in a better mood. But to quickly explain what the Oxford Time Travel series is about, it's about this school or this department in the Oxford University that basically are historians, but they can time travel, so they time travel back to a period of time to study it, not to change it, just to study it. And from there, things ensue. I want to say it's kind of campy in the tone, not in a bad way. This was, like, I think just the right kind of campy. Like, it still feels somewhat realistic, but still being not taking itself too seriously. I think it walks the line very well. But the idea is go back in time, and each book follows a different time period. The first book was like during the Black Plague, and someone has to avoid getting the Black Plague or from dying from the Black Plague. I'm not sure what it is, but this one, Victorian, something about a dog being stolen. To Say Nothing of the Dog is like a reference to that. A dog gets stolen, changing history, blah blah blah. I might be mischaracterizing that a bit, but that's the basic gist of this one. And we can't discount the fact that this dog, this name of this book, is actually quite clever. Really, like, how do you not love that title? Now, after having to free up space on my phone like 4 or 5 different times, we're going to say goodbye to this. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for watching all these. Let me know what you thought, generally speaking, of all of these themed book hauls. If you're okay with them, if it bothered you having to have one every week. I don't know if I'll keep doing it when I'm home, just because I'd have to hold on to books for so long, and also because I'm not technically hauling new books, currently speaking. But that's enough for now. Thanks so much for stopping by and for watching this. And as always, have a great day and stay safe, everyone. Goodbye. Oh yeah, forget to snap.